"Don't open it, Sheriff," she begged, yet he untied the rope and froze. He followed drag marks under a desert moon and found her, wrists torn, dress ripped, a blood-soaked sack at her side. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Don't open it!" "Sheriff." But when the knot slipped loose, what Sheriff Boone saw inside would shatter the West. The desert night pressed down like a heavy shroud, the stars, sharp as broken glass, scattered across black velvet. Sheriff Elias Boone's lantern cut a small circle of gold through the emptiness, its light catching on drag marks that wound across the sand. Something, or someone, had been pulled against their will. The trail ended in horror. A young woman lay sprawled near a mesquite, wrists bound raw, dress torn to tatters, her pale skin streaked with dirt and dried blood. Beside her slumped a burlap sack, its bottom darkened by a stiff, crusted stain. The sheriff's boots crunched to a halt. He crouched, the smell of iron and dust rising into his nose. When he cut her free, she recoiled, her green eyes wild with terror. Don't open it, Sheriff," she gasped, voice hoarse from thirst. Elias's gaze slid to the sack. It wasn't gold, too heavy and too wrong in shape. With a grunt, he tugged at the rope binding its mouth. Something shifted inside with a grotesque thump, soft but solid. For a heartbeat, the burlap parted just enough for him to glimpse a flash of pallid flesh and matted hair. His chest tightened. He yanked the rope closed again, jaw clenching. Whatever lay inside didn't belong under desert moonlight. The woman shuddered violently, curling in on herself. "If you value your soul, Sheriff, leave it tied, please." Elias studied her, young, fragile, yet her plea was not the fear of a thief hiding loot. It was deeper, older, the kind of terror that made a voice tremble like dry leaves. "Who left you out here?" he asked, rising slowly. Her eyes brimmed, but she bit her lip, refusing to speak. The sack seemed to pulse in the lantern's glow, demanding attention. Elias's hand tightened around the knot, then fell away. "Ma'am," he said at last, his voice low, "whatever devils put you here, they'll come looking for what they lost, and I aim to be ready." He lifted her in his arms, lantern swaying, leaving the sack slung behind his saddle. The wind carried her broken whisper into the night. "You don't understand. They'll kill you for carrying it." By dawn, the sheriff's cabin breathed smoke into the pale sky. Inside, fire snapped in the hearth, throwing restless light across rough-hewn walls. Clara sat wrapped in a blanket on the cot, her green eyes fixed on the burlap sack Elias had placed in the corner. No matter how he shifted it, her gaze followed, as though it might crawl across the floor of its own accord. Elias moved with quiet purpose, fetching water, grinding coffee, frying bacon in the skillet. He said little. Silence suited him, but this silence carried weight. Each act of care was deliberate. The tin cup set gently by her hand, the shawl he draped over her shoulders. Yet none of it loosened her tongue. She ate sparingly, sipping broth as though her throat fought every swallow. When her fingers trembled too much to hold the cup, Elias steadied it without a word. For the first time, her eyes met his, not with fear, but with something nearer to shame. Outside, the prairie stretched endless gold under the rising sun. Inside, the cabin walls seemed to listen. Elias had lived alone long enough to sense when the air itself held secrets, and this woman carried them heavy. Once, while he split wood, he caught her whispering into her locket, a name pressed like a prayer. Later, he found her crouched near the sack, not daring to touch it, only staring as tears streaked her dirt-stained cheeks. That night, when Elias pretended sleep, he heard her shifting under the blankets. She rose, padded barefoot to the sack, and sank to her knees. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered into the burlap. "I only wanted to stop him." The sheriff's eyes cracked open. Her face glowed in the firelight, every line etched in guilt. He said nothing, not yet. But the knot in his gut tightened. She was no common victim. Whatever was inside that sack wasn't just evidence, it was a burden. And Elias Boone, for reasons he couldn't name, had decided to share its weight. The nights grew long and heavy with secrets. Firelight painted the cabin walls, each crackle of pine sounding louder against the silence. Elias sat at the table, oiling his colt, while Clara hunched near the hearth, her eyes reflecting flame. At last, words broke from her lips, raw and trembling. His name was Warren. Scarface's brother! She gripped her locket tight as though it might steady her. He came to our town. Said he owned it. Took what he wanted. Lives, too. Elias stilled, the rag in his hand pausing over the revolver. Clara's voice cracked. When I saw what he did to my sister, I couldn't... She choked, swallowed. I swung the axe before he could finish. And when his body fell, I knew there'd be no law that would punish him. Not out here. Only his men. Only his brother. Her eyes flicked to the sack in the corner, shadowed and still. I thought if I carried proof, maybe the world would believe me. Maybe someone would know what he really was. Her hands trembled violently, but they caught me before I could run, tied me beside it, left me for buzzards. The sheriff leaned back, weathered face unreadable, though the firelight revealed a muscle tightening in his jaw. He had known killers. He had known victims. But Clara was something else, a woman who carried her own justice in burlap. Scarface will come for it, Elias said flatly. Not for proof, for blood. Clara's green eyes lifted to him, wide with both terror and hope. Will you turn me in? Let them take it? He met her gaze steadily, revolver gleaming in his hand. I swore an oath to uphold the law, but out here the law's as thin as smoke. Sometimes all a man can do is choose which ghost to carry. The wind howled outside, rattling the shutters like knuckles on a coffin. Inside the fire burned low, and in that silence a bond was struck, not of trust alone, but of shared damnation. Out here in the Wild West, every secret carried a price. And if this tale has gripped you so far, don't let it ride past. Hit subscribe for more stories of lawmen, outlaws, and the blood they leave in the dust. The first warning came as a column of dust rising on the horizon. By the time the sun slipped low, 4 riders thundered across the flats, their silhouettes sharp against the blood-red sky. Elias had been waiting. His rifle leaned by the door, his Colt already loaded. Clara clutched the sack to her chest as though it were her own beating heart. Her knuckles blanched white, eyes wide with the same dread he'd seen in men walking to the gallows. The riders slowed at the yard. Their leader dismounted, a broad man with a jagged scar cutting from temple to jaw. His sneer stretched cruel in the fading light. Scarface. Boone, he called, voice carrying like a whip. You've got something belongs to me. Elias stepped into the open, coat flapping in the hot wind. His stance was steady, shoulders squared. She's under my protection. Whatever quarrel you've got, you take it with me. Scarface laughed, a sound without mirth. Protection? You don't even know what you're holding. That sack carries death, Sheriff. Hand it over and maybe I'll let you keep breathing. Behind him, the riders spread like wolves circling prey, rifles glinting in the last rays of sun. The yard filled with the scent of dust and sweat, tension so thick it clawed the throat. Elias's hand brushed his Colt but didn't draw. His voice was low, calm, the way a man spoke before a storm. If death's in that sack, it's not yours to bury. Clara's voice rang sharp behind him. You murdered him, and now you want to hide what he was. Scarface's grin twisted darker. My brother may have been a brute, but he was family. You think a sheriff and a broken girl can stand against blood? The standoff stretched, every heartbeat louder than the wind. Clara trembled in the doorway, clutching burlap tighter. Elias's gray eyes fixed on Scarface, jaw like iron. Family or not, he said, voice cutting like steel, he won't ride these lands again. The outlaw's sneer faltered. His hand dropped to his revolver. The West held its breath. The first shot cracked the dusk wide open. Elias dove behind the trough as bullets chewed splinters from the fence. Clara screamed from the doorway, clutching the sack as lead hissed through the air. Horses reared, riders shouted. The ranch yard a storm of dust and smoke. Scarface strode forward through the chaos, revolver blazing, his scar twisting with every snarl. Give me the sack, Boone. or I'll burn this cabin to the ground." Elias rose from cover, Colt spitting fire. One outlaw toppled, another wheeled his horse away, blood dark on his sleeve. But Scarface pressed on, his boots pounding through the dust. Clara stumbled into the yard, eyes wild, burlap clutched to her chest. "You'll never hide him," she shouted. Her hands fumbled at the knot. Elias's breath caught. He knew what was coming but couldn't stop it. With a cry, she wrenched the rope free. The sack sagged open. Something heavy rolled onto the ground with a sickening thump. A severed head lay in the dirt, its face pale and stiff, eyes glassy, lips frozen in a silent snarl. Warren, the brother who had defiled, taken, destroyed. Proof in flesh of justice met by Clara's hand. The yard froze. Even the wind seemed to stop. Scarface staggered back, his sneer crumbling into a mask of grief and rage. You witch," he spat, voice breaking. Elias stood over the head, Colt raised, his gray eyes unyielding. "The truth's yours to bury, Scarface, but it's already out." For the first time, the outlaw faltered. His men shifted uneasy. One muttered a curse, another turned his horse. Scarface's fury trembled, but no bullet left his gun. At last, with a guttural roar, he holstered his revolver and mounted. "This isn't over, Boone!" he bellowed before spurring into the horizon, his riders scattering behind. Dust swallowed them. Silence returned, broken only by Clara's sobs. She sank to her knees, clutching her locket, as if empty now that the burden lay bare in the dirt. Elias lowered his Colt, holstered it, and laid a hand on her trembling shoulder. "The West don't forgive," he said softly, "but sometimes it remembers." The fire in the hearth flickered against the cabin window, casting long shadows across the yard. Clara's tears glistened, Elias's face grim, and Warren's head lay still in the sand, justice and damnation in one. The West never forgives, but it never forgets either. If this story struck you, like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell, because the next tale of vengeance and survival may ride in darker than this one, and you won't want to miss it.